What is going on, everybody? So, recently I noticed that I've been coming across quite a big misunderstanding about the practice of futures and foreset more and more. So, eventually I decided to do a video about this. And to be clear, this misunderstanding is actually something that I've been hearing a lot from students or in Q&As after the lectures I've given for quite some time. But the clincher for me really came when I heard of a journal editor also falling into this misunderstanding, which really prompted me to think of, oh, maybe I have not emphasized this enough myself. So this is really the reason behind this video. So here it is. The biggest misunderstanding about the practice of futures and foreset that I have been hearing a lot recently is that the purpose of a set of scenarios is to prepare only to the futures presented in that set of scenarios and nothing more. Now, why is this such a fundamental misunderstanding? Well, if you think about it, creating a set of scenarios only to prepare to that set of, say, 4 or 5 futures is just an extension of prediction. And prediction has a limited perspective on the future that scenarios are supposed to make up for in the first place. In fact, scenarios are generally considered superior to prediction, at least in the long-term future, because prediction is limited to one future state of the environment, while scenarios explore a larger variety of futures. But if we consider only a limited number of futures, then we are still limiting ourselves, like prediction, right? Okay, so at this point you might ask, but then what are you suggesting us to do? Creating a very large number, if not an infinite number of scenarios so that we take every possible eventuality into account? Well, not really. What I am suggesting to do, and that would possibly clarify the misunderstanding I just mentioned, is to consider a set of scenarios as a tool to simulate our capacity of preparedness in general. In other words, a set of scenarios should be sufficient as a simulation technique to activate our awareness about future change and increase our comfort to navigate every extreme conditions of that change presented in the environment. Besides, of course, in some occasions also creating the futures, but let's focus on the preparedness capability. Now, from this, it follows that we need to pay extra attention to do our scenarios well. And that means that we need to make sure that they are all extreme, yet plausible, and different enough from each other in order to be sufficient enough to trigger those preparedness and awareness capabilities. Now, a very good and also currently relevant example to illustrate this point is wildcard scenarios of pandemics. In Futures and Foreset projects, we oftentimes envision 2 or 3 wildcard scenarios originating from extreme events which might or might not include a pandemic. And by the way, if you want to learn more about wildcard scenarios, I suggest you take a look at this video where I've explained that in detail. Now, we do that so that we can simulate extreme conditions of the business environment where the organization where we do scenario planning may operate in the future. But the eventual future may not manifest in the form of the wildcards that we have examined, such as the pandemic. In other words, wildcard scenarios, such as a scenario of a pandemic, are used not only to prepare to a pandemic, but to train the preparedness organizational muscles that would serve us well in events of the seriousness of a pandemic in general. This will likely activate a number of beneficial organizational capabilities, such as encouragement of trial and error, cross-functional collaborations, and nonconformity. We don't want to prepare only to a pandemic and then be surprised by, say, an internet outage. We want to decrease our likelihood of being surprised in general. Now, if you are familiar with Futures and Foreset, at this point you might ask, but what about those Foreset methods that demand us to create a very large number of scenarios by enumerating all possible values of a set of parameters? For example, field anomaly relaxation or morphological analysis. Are them any good? Well, my opinion on those methods is that by creating all conceivable scenarios of certain parameters, for example, water usage or energy consumption, the resulting scenarios will certainly cover the many possible manifestations of those parameters in detail, but they will also take the attention away from other important aspects of scenarios, such as coherence, interrelation between driving forces, etc. So to that point, I would respond that unless you're really prioritizing those parameters above all in your scenarios, the quality of scenarios rather than the quantity of scenarios is important. After all, human attention cannot handle well more than 7 scenarios anyway, let alone dozens of them. So I really hope that this video helped you to be clear about this misunderstanding about futures and forecast, and as a consequence, to be clear about what futures and forecast is all about. If you liked this video, I would super appreciate to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao!